There's one thing that I don't like, that is being cold. I mean, that's one of the reasons I moved from my childhood home in New York to sunny Southern California. Well, actually, technically, I went to school in Florida, then I moved to California. Anyways, semantics. It's hard to be cold here. And let me clarify though, I don't mind being in the cold. It's actually sleeping in the cold where I become a hardliner. But as you guys know, I enjoy cold weather camping, and now that autumn is here, friends, it is time to start preparing for the winter season. Now, if you're in the same boat, you need to do a little preventive maintenance on your diesel heaters before you go heading out. I mean, after all, you want to fire them up now. Heck, make sure everything is working well, as opposed to waiting until you're out in the winter camping trip only to find out that your heater doesn't work. Not cool! And many of you have been reaching out to us regarding your inexpensive diesel heaters that you've picked up off of Amazon. Now, this video is especially important to you, and since I've gotten quite a handful of questions recently about diesel heater maintenance, I figured...
Two birds with one stone.
You ever wonder where these statements... That sounds rather brash. And whatever. And technically, there's 3 birds, 1 stone in this video. Anyways, I'm going to show you what I do to keep my heaters running smoothly and blowing that glorious, warm, dry heat all season long. Now, as many of you know, I have actually 2 diesel heaters that I use. In my Turtleback Expedition trailer, I have a 2 kilowatt auto-term diesel heater that's actually mounted in the nose of it. And when I get out to location, my tent's deployed, I have this hose that goes up there. It taps into the battery lines in the trailer, and voila.
But wait, there's more.
And when I have a ground tent or larger applications, I have a Planar 4 kilowatt portable diesel heater that is an absolute champ. Now, I've been using these things, man, I think 2 or 3 years, and these heaters are absolute, man, they're bulletproof. I've had 0 issues with these. But anyways, without further ado, let's get into today's episode of Wasabi Toothpaste. Yeah, no thanks. You know what's funny is, as my team and I sat down to start drafting up the storyboard for this video, we noticed many of you had been asking kind of general questions about diesel fuel. And seeing that we're talking about diesel heaters, you know, I thought it'd be fun if you and I, hey, we're going to jump in the Wayback Machine and we're going to explore briefly the history of this fuel, which I can tell you is some pretty interesting stuff. And now, if you have no interest in the brief little history lesson here, what I will do is I'll put a little timestamp down below. Just move that little play button underneath this video, bounce forward to that time, and you will skip the history lesson and straight to the maintenance of diesel heaters. But I promise you, this is pretty interesting stuff. So, as it turns out, like many other things in history, diesel fuel is actually named after the inventor of the diesel engine, Rudolf Diesel, who was a German inventor back in the day, and he patented this engine that was right around 1890s. And actually, speaking of which, here are a few fun facts when we were kind of researching into the whole diesel fuel thing that we found relating diesel engines being used. So, did you know the first locomotive with a diesel engine being used? If you guessed 1912 or around there, yeah, you are ding, 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 winner. It was a Swiss Winter Thor Roman Horn, and I know I just cannibalized the hell out of that name, but the important thing is it's not Thomas the Train. The first truck produced with a diesel engine was 1923 Benz and Kai. And the interesting thing about this here is this company would later merge with Mercedes, and this would ultimately become the Mercedes-Benz as we know today. Now, the first passenger car with a diesel engine, and speaking of Mercedes-Benz, was 1936 Mercedes-Benz 260D, and the D, of course, designates diesel. Now, the exact year and origin of the first diesel heater, this is where I hit a wall. We had a difficult time trying to pin down, because the idea of using diesel heat for fuel and applications really likely evolved gradually since the invention of the diesel heater. Now, if you happen to know, obviously you know what type of diesel heaters we're talking about here. If you happen to know more information on this, friend, do me a favor, leave a comment down below. I would be greatly appreciated. I would probably use that information in a future video, and I will give you recognition and much love in that video for helping us out with that little factoid. But anyway, getting back over to where we're heading into this video here, many of you have never dealt with diesel fuel, and we see that in the comments. And so we see a lot of questions are, how is diesel fuel different from gas? Now, diesel is refined from crude oil and biomass materials. Now, in the US, about 11 to 12 gallons of diesel fuel can be derived from 40 gallons barrel of crude oil. But diesel can also be made from biomass materials like animal fat and vegetable oils, kind of similar like what Arnold Schwarzenegger's Humvee runs on there. Now, if you happen to be wondering what is the difference between diesel and gasoline, well, diesel is much thicker and less refined than gas. Now, they also ignite differently as well. Now, in a gas engine, the fuel is mixed with air, compressed by a piston, and then spark is created by the spark plug to ignite the fuel in the air mixture, which then pushes the piston, which creates the energy that makes you go. A diesel engine, on the other hand, doesn't have spark plugs. Instead, they have much higher compression ratios, and as a result, the combustion occurs simply from the piston compressing the mixture of air and vaporized diesel in a combustion chamber. But why does this all matter, and why is diesel the preferred alternative to gasoline? Well, that's simple. There are way more advantages of using diesel than there are disadvantages. So, for example, diesel has a greater energy density than other liquid fuels like gasoline, and as a result, it provides much more energy per unit volume. A second advantage is that diesel is less flammable and less explosive than other fuels. So, for our purposes of overlanding enthusiasts, minimizing our chances of the fuel blowing up our trailers and tents is a big definite advantage. Now, regarding diesel engines, they are less likely to stall than gas-powered engines, which is certainly a bonus when you're relying on diesel-powered heater to keep you warm in the dead of winter. And diesel engines are also much more powerful, efficient, and much more reliable than gas engines. Now, of course, diesel is much more expensive than gasoline, which can be a major disadvantage when you're fueling up your truck. However, these heaters use so little fuel that higher fuel prices isn't really much of a big issue. But more is, as I said earlier, diesel has much more potential energy than gasoline, so you don't have to use as much of it to accomplish the same amount of work, which is a big old bonus. Now, let me be very clear here, guys. I'm not a diesel expert by any means, so there might be some other pros and cons with using diesel over other fuels, but this is what I know based upon my experience and my research. So if you have other pros and cons to share based upon your experiences, friend, be sure to drop them in a comment down below. Would love to hear that as well. Okay, enough of the chit chat about diesel. Let's head outside so I can walk you through the very simple steps that I take to ensure that my 2 kilowatt Autoterm diesel heater, that again is in the front of my Turtleback, and then of course my 4 kilowatt, which is the portable Planar portable diesel heater, are kept in tip-top running shape. Well, it's 8:30 at night and I'm about midway through editing this video, and it just dawned on me two things. Well, first off, there's no sunlight coming into from this side right here. I have this really interesting lighting going on. I need to get another light over here. The second thing, as I'm going through this, editing this video here, I realize I have a really good opportunity to address a lot of the cons that I have with these Chinese diesel heaters. Many of you may know, or I think I actually mentioned in the earlier portion of this video, a few years back at a lot of requests from you folks, we went out there, we actually tested a few different Chinese diesel heaters. So I have quite a bit of hands-on experience with these, and it's not good. I have a lot of cons with these things, and also through obviously running four-wheel drive talk, I get a lot of feedback from you folks. So I hear a lot of the noise, a lot of the things are going wrong with your diesel heaters that you have picked up. And then factor that one step further, I have a buddy of mine who bought what he thought was a German-made diesel heater, and he started noticing a bunch of diesel smells coming out of it, this and that, and some diesel fuel. And so he took the thing apart, found out everything inside of it is made in China. And so he tried framing it, putting it together in another case, and it just turned into a train wreck. Things kept going, cascading, going wrong with it after another, after another. So again, when we're talking about these Chinese diesel heaters here, it's unfortunately, most of the noise out there is, it's not good for these things. And so I figured, okay, again, you guys are watching a video here that's talking about maintenance for a diesel heater. So perhaps either you have one of these Chinese diesel heaters, or you might be shopping for a diesel heater. So either way, this is a good opportunity to address. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to cover some of the cons with these Chinese diesel heaters and things that you need to keep in mind. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Quality control, less stringent quality control can lead to faulty or substandard products reaching the consumers. Some of these units might have manufacturing defects, which can affect performance and safety. Next, performance and efficiency. Now, it may have inconsistent heating performance. Efficiency may be lower than compared to reputable brands. Then, of course, there's the safety concerns, potential for higher emissions of harmful substances. The lack of safety features or certifications might pose a risk as well. And then on top of that, when you look at these inexpensive heaters, there's a compromise in the quality of parts that go into it. So the next big item here is shorter lifespan and durability. I mean, you're talking about something that may not be as durable or as long lasting as the more expensive reputable brands. Components may wear out or break down quicker due to the lower quality of the materials that are being used. Now, here's something that I experienced. I remember just as it was yesterday, the first inexpensive Chinese diesel heater that I ordered, I had a lot of questions. The manual was no help and everything was in Chinese. And I tried to reach out to customer service. There is lack of customer support, which can be difficult to get customer support or warranty service. And the lack of clear instructions in troubleshooting guidance. Now, let's imagine for a moment you do have one of these things here and something goes wrong. Spare parts availability. So it's harder to find replacement parts, especially in non-standard or off-brand models. So the lack of well-established kind of a supply chain, spare parts and repairs. And I almost feel that we have to go back to talking about the inadequate documentation. The manuals can be extremely poorly written, lack of clear instructions, or it may even be in the users, not in the users being ours native language. I remember the one that I was talking about there, the instructions, not exaggeration, it was run-on sentences, spelling errors all throughout. It looked like a 5-year-old wrote it. And I'm not trying to make a joke here. It was that bad. But the lack of information and resources to help with installation, operation, and maintenance could be troublesome as well. Now, 2 of the 3, I can talk about this next one here. Fuel efficiency and emissions might consume more fuel for the same amount of heat output compared to a higher quality heaters. It may also have emissions which can be harmful to the environment. Now, 2 of these units, I remember that they ran extremely rich, and which as a result of that, one of them, I remember we were over at Alabama Hills. I just filled the thing up. I think it was like 10 p.m. at night. By 1:30 in the morning, now mind you, it's like minus 13 out or something like that. It was cold out. And so I had to get out. It's freezing. That's right, because I had my son with me. So I'm going outdoors trying to fill this thing up, and it is so stinking cool. What made it colder is the wind's blowing. And I'm trying to fill this heater up, 1:30 in the morning, which is, that didn't work out so well. And then when I tried starting the thing, it wouldn't start. So it died on me during the wee mornings of the night. Now, before we close out this part, talking about these inexpensive Chinese diesel heaters, let's talk about some of the more common components that can go wrong with these things. And again, we're talking about things that when you have a high quality diesel heater, these are things that from a maintenance standpoint, you really don't need to worry about except on a rare occurrence. But when you're talking about equipment where the quality has been compromised so that you can get it at the unit at an inexpensive price, things go wrong. So let's start off with glow plugs. I mean, these are essential for ignition and may fail, requiring, of course, replacement. Fuel pumps. Now, cheaply made fuel pumps can malfunction, affecting the fuel delivery to the heater. Those units I was just telling you about, bingo, that's what was happening right there. Something, it wasn't the fuel pump, something inside. Either way, the things are running extremely rich. The control units. Now, the electronic control may be experiencing faults that hinder the heater's operation. And then, of course, we're going to talk about fuel lines and filters. Now, they may become clogged or leak or need cleaning or replacement. Now, I've never had one become clogged, but I did have one that's leaked. And actually, my buddy that I was telling you about, That was one of the problems with the heater that he had there. It was leaking inside. Then, of course, you have the combustion chambers, and substandard materials can lead to premature wear or damage. Exhaust systems. Problems can leaks, blockage might occur, requiring repairs. And when you're talking about exhaust and you have this heater that is near you and it's blowing out exhaust closer than where it needs to be, yeah, you can be huffing this stuff in there. Fan motors. Motor failures are common, which can affect the heater's ability to distribute that warm heat where you want it. Yeah, big problem. Wiring connectors. Cheap materials can lead to electronic issues such as short circuits. Seals and gaskets. Now, they may degrade or fail, leading to leaks and, of course, other problems. Thermostats. And this is it's funny, two of those that I keep bringing up here. Both of those, the thermostats, first off, were in Chinese, and there's no documentation to show you how to get the darn things in English, which was a pain in the rear end. But either way, they can fail, affecting the heater's ability to regulate temperature. So there you go, guys. My cons, things that I just don't like, why I don't like these things from my experience with a few of these heaters. I mean, especially over the last 5-6 years, these diesel heaters have become very, very popular. And as a result of that popularity, these inexpensive heaters have become quite popular as well because of their affordability. But then when people get them, they realize they might get a season out of them if they're lucky, or they are just so problematic that they give up on them. And that's, again, these are a lot of the questions and things that we see come across our table here. So as you're watching this video here, I encourage you, I mean, there are a handful of companies out there that make a very good quality diesel heater. And this is just one of those items that if you plan to be doing some winter camping and doing it on a regular basis, a diesel heater is just one of those items that you want to flex your budget on. You want to get something that is of good, decent quality that's going to last you through the years. And when you find something or when you pick up something where you have a high pedigree and so forth, again, the maintenance just really narrows down a bit there. That said, well, we'll shift gears and get back to closing off this video.
All right, friends, now it's time to shift gears and we're outdoors. I'm going to share with you now what you need to do from a maintenance standpoint. When you have a high quality diesel heater, that path of maintenance is much more narrow and it's not quite as long as the cheap Chinese diesel heaters. The cheap Chinese diesel heaters, in order to get those prices where they are, there is a compromise in the quality of the parts that they put in there, as we discussed already. So when you have a high quality diesel heater, and there's a few companies that really make a very high quality diesel heater. For me, at the end of the day, as you watch this channel long enough to know, I've tested a lot of diesel heaters, and ultimately at the end of the day, I like the Planar and the Autoterm diesel heaters because, in my opinion, I think they're quieter than a few of the other leaders that are out there right now, which makes these the winner in my book. Plus, geez, it's been three years that I've been running both these diesel heaters, and as you're going to find out here in a moment, a lot of the maintenance stuff that you're supposed to be doing, I don't do on a regular basis myself, and yet I have not had a single problem with either of these diesel heaters. The one that's in the nose right here, this is a 2 kilowatt. This is the smaller of the two units that I have. This is a 2 kilowatt Autoterm heater, and then of course the big one right here, which is what I use for ground tents or larger spaces I need. This is the Planar 4 kilowatt. So anyway, let's get down to the maintenance. I have all my trusty notes here. So what you should be doing to properly maintain your diesel heaters is every 6 months you want to run the heater at full heat for about 1 hour, and this is going to keep the fuel system clean and free from deposits and burn off any carbon deposits that may be there. Now, one thing that you want to do is you don't want to run your heater on low for a long period of time. However, if you do run it on low, what you want to do is crank up the heater for 10 minutes before you go shutting it down at full speed and just let it run its course right there. And then each month you want to run your heaters 15 minutes just to keep things moving and so forth. Then if you're starting up your diesel heaters for the first time for the season, you want to pick yourself up some kerosene. We're not talking about kerosene alternatives, actual pure kerosene itself. And you can either mix it in your tank, or you can actually run the kerosene pure inside the heaters itself. And actually, speaking of kerosene, if you're going to be in a higher elevation over 5,000 feet, you want to either run pure kerosene, or you want to mix the kerosene inside with the diesel. And this actually works out good if you're in a super cold environment as well. The kerosene is going to keep the diesel from gelling up. And one last little thing before I go getting into the actual setup. If you haven't run your heaters in a bit and you want to put some sort of treatment in it, you can actually use the seafoam in these things as well. I picked this up to play show and tell. I'm not going to run it today. I'm just going to put the kerosene in here. I'm feeling pretty confident both of these machines are going to fire up. And one thing to kind of be an open book and point out here. Now, I've just shared with you what you're supposed to be doing with these things. If I'm being truthful here, I haven't exactly followed these to the T. Yeah, well, not even close. The 4 kilowatt, the big one right here, I haven't started it at probably 4 to 5 months. The 2 kilowatt in the front of this thing, it's been probably a good 3 to 4 months. Now, both of these have been emptied. Both of these have a bit of diesel fuel already in them. And the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a gallon of kerosene into each one of these things. And then we're going to plug these things in and let them fire up. Now, here's the penalty, or the possible penalty, to me not following these directions here. And it could be the very penalty that you will face if you do not take care of your heaters like you're supposed to here. And more so if you have one of the cheap Chinese diesel heaters and so forth. That's, as I shared with you in the beginning of this video, if you have a cheap Chinese diesel heater, maintenance is even more critical, because you don't, for reasons that we spoke already. But here's with my heaters, I know if, worst case scenario, if either one of these don't fire up, chances are the fuel pump is probably all mucked up, and that's going to need to be swapped out. So that's going to be kind of the price of an admission for me not following these very simple directions here. But anyways, what we're going to do now is I'm going to put the kerosene into each one of those. I'm going to get the power supplies plugged into each one of these. We're going to fire them up for 1 hour, and we're going to let them do their thing. So now this thing is on, there's power, and as we can see here, the touch screen is ready for us to crank on. So all I'm going to do with this heater is I'm going to press the center. As you can see, hopefully there's no glare there. It's cranking on. You can hear that initial fan spooling up. Now we wait. All right, you can hear the heater beginning to spool up. Might be hard to hear with the wind, but oh yeah, here we go. Like a champ. All right, so with this one, it is pretty much the same boat. All right, so if you haven't seen this one, I'll put a link down below in the description where you can see more of how to set this up. As you can see, the construction of this is pretty straightforward. You have your heater assembly here, fuel pump down there, exhaust going out, and air inlet coming on the other side. So we're going to close this back up. All right, now what's super important with any of these diesel heaters is to have a good reliable power source. So we're gonna be plugging this one into here. And Planar makes these super easy. Simply have 2 wires. You're gonna plug in, this could be for our power source right here. All right, and then the other one is going to be for the actual thermostat or the control of it, and that's the other wire. So again, they make it super easy. Now we're gonna plug this thing in. All right, make sure we have power. All right, and we should. All right, so we have lights ready to go, so we're gonna hit our power button, and now this one should start doing its thing. All right, come to think of it, the last time that this one was ran was January of this year, which is more than 5 months ago. Jeez, that was 8 months ago. Holy smokes. That was, this is heating up the Overlandish Base Camp 2. Remember, it was cold, windy, and okay, here it goes. It's spooling up pretty well at this point, and it's blowing out a lot of heat. So now, as I shared with you with both of these here, kind of 2 birds, 1 stone. I'm gonna let both of these run for their hour, and yeah, they're good for the season.
Yes!
Okay, now that the heaters are good to go for winter season, all that we need to do is wait for the colder winter weather to arrive, which fortunately is not going to be long. I, for one, cannot wait for the first snowy camping trip. Well, friends, thanks for tuning in and learning a little bit about diesel heaters and what needs to happen to keep them running smoothly. Now, if you learned something or otherwise enjoyed this today's video, do me a solid and give this video a like. And as I said earlier, be sure to leave a comment if you have any questions or things to add to this all-important subject. Well, with that said, it's time for me to get out of here and get back to the grind, so I'll see you during the next video.